I stood in front of the mirror, fixing my hair for the third time. The wedding was just a few weeks away, and I had a million things to do. But for some reason, my hair was my biggest problem at that moment. I sighed and grabbed my phone, ready to check my to-do list for the day. But before I could even unlock the screen, my phone started ringing. I glanced at the caller ID. It was the wedding venue. My stomach twisted a little. Why would they be calling me this early? I took a deep breath and answered. Hello. Hi, is this Mia Johnson? A woman's voice asked. Yes, this is Mia. I'm calling from the Rosewood Garden wedding venue. We just received a request to cancel your reservation. The world around me froze. Excuse me, I said, gripping the phone tighter. Cancel? No, that's impossible. I never sent any request. There was a short pause. Then the woman said, Well, we received an email from your account this morning, confirming the cancellation. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. I rushed to my laptop and opened my email. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through my sent messages. And there it was, an email to the venue, requesting to cancel the wedding, signed with my name. But there was something else. At the very end of the message, there was a phrase, a simple sentence, but one that sent a cold chill down my spine. Everything happens for a reason. I knew that phrase. I had heard it so many times before, but not for me. For my sister, Emma. I clenched my jaw. My hands curled into fists. Miss Johnson, the woman on the phone asked, sounding concerned. Don't cancel anything, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. I'll figure this out and call you back. I hung up before she could respond. My chest felt tight as I tried to calm myself down. Why would Emma do this? I grabbed my phone again and scrolled through my messages. There was nothing suspicious from Emma. No hints, no warnings. But deep inside, I knew she was involved. I needed answers. I stormed out of my apartment, barely stopping to grab my car keys. My sister's house was only 15 minutes away, and I drove like a maniac, gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. When I arrived, I didn't bother knocking. I pushed the door open and walked in. Emma was sitting on the couch, sipping coffee, her legs tucked under her. She looked up at me, surprised. Mia, what's wrong? She asked, putting down her mug. I held up my phone. You tell me. Her face remained calm, too calm. I don't know what you're talking about, she said. Don't lie to me, Emma. I snapped. Someone canceled my wedding venue from my email, and they used your favorite phrase at the end. Emma's lips pressed into a thin line. That doesn't mean it was me, she said quietly. I let out a bitter laugh. Oh, come on. Who else would do this? Who else even has access to my email? Emma crossed her arms. Mia, maybe this is a sign. Maybe you need to think about whether this wedding is really the right choice for you. I stared at her in disbelief. A sign? A sign of what? That my own sister is trying to sabotage my wedding. My voice rose with every word. What the hell is wrong with you? Emma stood up, her expression unreadable. You're not listening. I shook my head, stepping closer. No, Emma, you're not listening. This is my life, my wedding, my future, and you have no right to mess with it. For the first time, I saw something flicker in her eyes. Guilt, regret. I just want what's best for you, she murmured. I scoffed. Really? Then why does it feel like you only want what's best for you? Emma looked away. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to calm down. I don't care what your reason is, I said, but you're going to fix this. Right now. Emma swallowed hard but said nothing. I turned around and walked toward the door. If you don't fix it, I added over my shoulder, I will. And with that, I left. My hands were still shaking as I got into my car. This wasn't over. Not even close. I barely felt my hands gripping the steering wheel as I drove away from Emma's house. My mind was racing so fast I could hardly think straight. My own sister had tried to cancel my wedding, and she hadn't even denied it. She had just sat there, looking at me like I was the one being unreasonable. The worst part, she didn't seem sorry. I pulled into the parking lot of a small coffee shop, needing a moment to breathe. My heart was still pounding, my emotions swinging between anger and confusion. I reached for my phone and checked my messages again, hoping that maybe, somehow, this was all a mistake. But no, the email was still there, sent from my account. I had changed my password just in case, but that didn't solve the bigger problem. Emma had crossed a line, and I needed to understand why. I took a deep breath and scrolled through my contacts. There was only one person who might have an answer, Liam. Liam was my fiancé's best friend. If something was wrong with the wedding, if Emma had some twisted reason for trying to stop it, maybe Liam knew. He was always in the middle of everything, whether we liked it or not. I tapped on his name and hit call. The phone rang 3 times before he picked up. Mia? Hey, what's up? His voice was casual, as if this was just a normal day. I didn't waste time. Did anything weird happen with Noah recently? A pause. Weird how? I clenched my jaw. Just answer the question, Liam. Did he say anything about not wanting to get married? Did something happen? Liam exhaled loudly. Look, Mia, I don't know if I should be the one telling you this. My stomach twisted. Telling me what? Another pause. Longer this time. Liam, I pressed. What is it? He sighed. Okay, fine. A few nights ago, Noah got really drunk. We were at my place, just hanging out, and he started talking about regrets. My breath caught in my throat. Regrets? I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. He said he wasn't sure if he was making the right choice, Liam admitted. He wasn't saying he doesn't love you, Mia, but he was doubting things, wondering if he was ready. You know how guys are when they drink. He was probably just overthinking. I squeezed my eyes shut. My heart felt like it was cracking open. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I asked, my voice trembling. I thought he'd snap out of it, Liam said. And honestly, I didn't want to cause drama before your wedding. I let out a bit of laugh. Too late for that. Liam sighed again. Mia, listen. I don't think he meant it in a bad way. Everyone gets cold feet. But I guess if Emma found out about it. My eyes snapped open. Wait, Emma knew about this. Silence. Liam. I pressed. He hesitated. I think so. She was there that night, too. She wasn't drinking, but she heard everything. She tried to calm Noah down, told him he was just nervous. But I don't know, Mia. Maybe she took it the wrong way. Maybe she thought she was helping you by doing whatever she did. I felt sick. My own sister had overheard my fiancé doubting our marriage and had decided to take matters into her own hands. She hadn't talked to me. She hadn't warned me. She had just acted like she knew what was best for me, like I couldn't make my own choices. I gritted my teeth. Thanks, Liam. I need to go. He started to say something else, but I hung up before he could finish. My fingers curled around my phone, my nails pressing into my palm. Emma had done this because she thought she was protecting me. She thought she knew better than me. I wasn't going to let her win. I turned the key in the ignition and drove straight to Noah's apartment. When I got there, I didn't even knock. I used my spare key and pushed the door open. Noah was sitting on the couch, watching TV. But when he saw me, he sat up straight. Mia, what's going on? I shut the door behind me, my whole body tense. You tell me. His brows furrowed. What do you mean? I crossed my arms. Were you ever planning to tell me, Noah? Or were you just going to keep pretending everything was fine until it was too late? His face paled. Mia, don't lie to me. I cut him off. I know you told Liam you had regrets. I know Emma heard everything. And I know she thought she was doing me a favor by trying to stop this wedding. Noah ran a hand through his hair, looking guilty as hell. It's not what you think. I let out a sharp laugh. Really? Because it looks like my fiancé was having doubts about marrying me and didn't think I deserved to know. Noah stood up. Mia, I wasn't doubting you. I was doubting myself. I stared at him, my heart pounding. He took a step closer. I love you, Mia, but I've never done this before. I've never been married, and it scares the hell out of me. What if I screw up? What if I can't be the husband you deserve? Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. So instead of talking to me, you got drunk and told Liam? You let Emma decide what was best for us. Noah's shoulders sagged. I didn't let her do anything. I didn't even know she was going to. I shook my head. That's not the point, Noah. The point is that everyone seems to have an opinion about our marriage, but no one thought to ask me how I felt. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. I don't know what to do with this, I admitted. I don't know how to just pretend this never happened. Noah looked at me, his expression full of something I couldn't quite place. Regret, pain, love, maybe all three. I don't want to lose you, he whispered. I swallowed hard. Then prove it. I turned and walked out before he could say anything else. My whole body felt like it was trembling as I got into my car. Emma had tried to stop this wedding because she thought she was protecting me. Noah had doubts because he was scared. And me, I wasn't sure what I believed anymore. I drove around for almost an hour before realizing I had no idea where I was going. My thoughts were spinning in circles, my emotions crashing into each other like waves in a storm. Emma had tried to stop my wedding. Noah had doubts. And I was sitting here, lost in my own city, feeling like a stranger in my own life. Eventually, I pulled into an empty parking lot outside a small park. The sun was starting to set, casting long shadows across the pavement. I turned off the engine and rested my forehead against the steering wheel, taking deep breaths. I needed to think. I loved Noah. I had never doubted that. But could I marry someone who had been questioning our future behind my back? Could I ignore the fact that my own sister had gone behind my back to protect me from something she assumed would destroy me? I reached for my phone and scrolled through my messages. There was a text from my mom, asking if I had time to talk. A few missed calls from my bridesmaids, and a message from Emma. Please, Mia, we need to talk. I didn't do this to hurt you. I stared at the message, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. A part of me wanted to scream at her, to tell her she had no right to make decisions for me. Another part wanted to ask her why. Why did she think she knew better than me? I tapped out a response. Meet me at the park near our old school in 30 minutes. She replied almost instantly. I'll be there. I put my phone down and leaned back in my seat, staring out at the darkening sky. My heart felt heavy, like it was carrying the weight of too many emotions at once. I wasn't sure what I wanted to hear from Emma, but I knew I needed answers. When I arrived at the park, she was already there, sitting on one of the old wooden benches. She looked up as I approached, her expression tense, but hopeful. I crossed my arms, keeping my distance. Start talking. Emma sighed, running a hand through her hair. Mia, I know you're mad. I get it. But you have to believe me when I say I never wanted to hurt you. I let out a sharp laugh. You hacked into my email and tried to cancel my wedding. What exactly was your goal then? Her face twisted with guilt. I wasn't trying to cancel it. I wanted to slow things down, give you a chance to think. I narrowed my eyes. And you thought you had the right to make that decision for me. Emma exhaled, shaking her head. No, Mia. But I heard Noah that night. I saw how scared he was. And I was scared for you. You love him so much. And I didn't want you to wake up one day and realize he wasn't as sure as you were. My chest ached. That wasn't your choice to make. She looked down at her hands. I know, but I thought I was protecting you. I sat down on the bench next to her, my body tense. You could have just told me. You could have come to me like a sister instead of going behind my back. Emma swallowed hard. Would you have listened? I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe I would have heard her out. But deep down, I knew I would have brushed it off. I had been so focused on the wedding, on planning everything perfectly, that I might not have taken her concerns seriously. I let out a slow breath. That still doesn't excuse what you did. She nodded. I know. And I'm sorry, Mia. Really. I messed up. But you have to admit, he was having doubts. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I closed my eyes for a moment before whispering, I know. Emma hesitated before reaching for my hand. What are you going to do? I pulled my hand away, not because I was angry, but because I still didn't have an answer. I don't know. She nodded slowly, understanding that I needed space. Just promise me you'll think about it. Not about the wedding, not about the dress or the guests. Just about you. what you want, not what everyone else expects. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time that day, I saw my sister, not the person who had betrayed me, but the person who had always tried, in her own messed up way, to look out for me. I stood up, my legs feeling heavy. I need time. Emma didn't argue. She just nodded. Take all the time you need. I turned and walked away, my heart still a tangled mess. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, my mind refusing to settle. My phone buzzed on my nightstand, and I reached for it, half expecting another message from Emma. But it was from Noah. I know I messed up, but I love you. Can we talk? I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. I had spent so much time preparing for this wedding, for the life I thought we were building together. But now, I wasn't sure if we were standing on solid ground or sinking sand. I took a deep breath and typed out a response. Tomorrow. Then I turned off my phone and closed my eyes, hoping that maybe, just maybe, tomorrow would bring some clarity. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my head was full of static. I had barely slept, tossing and turning as my mind kept replaying everything that had happened. Emma's betrayal, Noah's doubts, my own uncertainty. I stared at my phone for a long time before finally unlocking it. There was no new message from Noah, which felt both like a relief and a disappointment. I had told him we could talk today, but now that the morning had arrived, I wasn't sure I was ready. I dragged myself out of bed and into the shower, letting the hot water run over me as I tried to push away the heavy feeling in my chest. By the time I got dressed, my mom was already in the kitchen, sipping coffee and scrolling through her phone. She glanced up when I walked in, her eyes studying me carefully. "You look exhausted," she said, setting down her mug. I sighed, grabbing a cup for myself. "I feel exhausted." She waited a moment before asking, "Are you going to see Noah today?" I nodded, not trusting myself to say more. She reached out, squeezing my hand gently. "You don't have to make any decisions right away. Just talk to him. See where his head is at." I let out a slow breath. That's what I'm afraid of. An hour later, I found myself standing outside Noah's apartment, my stomach twisting into knots. I had been here 100 times before, but today, everything felt different. I hesitated before finally knocking. A few seconds later, the door opened, and there he was. He looked like he hadn't slept either. His hair was a mess, his eyes slightly red. He stepped aside, letting me in without a word. The apartment was quiet, and I could tell he had been pacing. There were 2 half-empty cups of coffee on the counter, and his phone was face down on the couch. He rubbed the back of his neck, exhaling sharply before finally speaking. I don't even know where to start. I crossed my arms, leaning against the wall. Maybe with the truth? He nodded, taking a deep breath. "Mia, I love you." I have never doubted that. But I got scared. The wedding was happening so fast, and I started wondering if we were rushing into it. If I was ready to be the kind of husband you deserved. My heart clenched. "And you didn't think you could tell me that?" His jaw tightened. "I didn't want to hurt you. And honestly, I was afraid of how you'd react. You were so excited about the wedding, and I didn't want to be the one to ruin that." I swallowed hard, my voice quieter now. "So instead, you talked to Emma?" His face darkened slightly. "I never asked her to do what she did. I didn't even know she was going to. She overheard me talking to my brother about my doubts, and I guess she took it upon herself to fix things." I shook my head, a bitter laugh escaping me. So my own sister decided she knew what was best for me, and my fiancé decided he couldn't be honest with me. Great. Noah stepped closer, his voice softer now. "Mia, I was going to tell you. I needed to figure out what was going on in my own head first." I searched his face, looking for something, anything, that would make this feel less like my entire world was crumbling. "And have you figured it out?" He hesitated, just for a second, but that second was enough. Tears stung my eyes as I looked away. "That's what I thought." "Mia, wait." I held up a hand. "No, I don't want to hear more excuses. If you don't know by now whether you want to marry me, then I don't know what else to say." He ran a hand through his hair, frustration clear on his face. It's not that simple. I let out a breathless laugh. It actually is. You either want this, or you don't. And if you're not sure, then what are we even doing? Silence filled the room. I turned to leave, but before I reached the door, his voice stopped me. I don't want to lose you. I froze, my fingers tightening around my bag. Then don't. When I turned back, he looked like he was at war with himself. Like he wanted to pull me into his arms and fix everything, but didn't know how. I shook my head, feeling the lump in my throat grow. Noah, I can't keep being the only one fighting for this. He took a step forward, but I stepped back. I need time, I whispered. And maybe you do too. His face fell, but he didn't argue. Maybe because he knew I was right. I turned and walked out, my heart shattering with every step. I spent the next few days in a fog. I went through the motions, woke up, got dressed, went to work, but everything felt numb. My mind was stuck on a loop, replaying every conversation, every moment that had led to this. The silence between Noah and me was unbearable, but I didn't know what else to say. He needed time. I needed space. But none of that made the pain any easier. Emma tried calling. I ignored her. My sister, the person I had trusted most in the world, had taken it upon herself to decide what was best for me. I couldn't forgive her, not yet. Maybe not ever. The worst part was that she still hadn't even tried to explain herself. No apology, no excuse, nothing. Just a few missed calls and a text that read, "Can we talk?" I couldn't. On the third night, I found myself sitting in my car outside a cafe, staring blankly at the rain hitting the windshield. I had no idea how I got there. My hands were still gripping the steering wheel, my knuckles white. I should have gone home, but I couldn't bring myself to move. A knock on my window made me jump. I turned and saw Ethan, my best friend from college, peering through the glass with a concerned expression. I hesitated before rolling the window down. "What are you doing out here?" he asked. I sighed, rubbing my forehead, thinking, in the middle of a rainstorm? Alone? Guess so. He studied me for a moment before nodding toward the cafe. "Come inside. I'll buy you coffee." I didn't argue. The warmth of the cafe was a welcome change from the cold, and the smell of fresh pastries filled the air. We sat in a corner booth, and Ethan slid a cup of coffee toward me. "Talk to me," he said. I stared at the cup, watching the steam rise. I don't even know where to start. Start anywhere. I took a deep breath. Noah isn't sure if he wants to marry me. Ethan's expression darkened. "That's not what I expected you to say." "Yeah, well, neither did I." He leaned back, crossing his arms. "And what about you? Do you still want to marry him?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I had spent so much time waiting for Noah to decide. I hadn't really thought about my own answer. "I don't know," I admitted. Ethan raised an eyebrow. "That's a problem." I let out a humorless laugh. "No kidding." He sighed, drumming his fingers against the table. "You love him, right?" "Yes." "But do you trust him?" That question felt like a punch to the stomach. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to believe that Noah and I could fix this. But the truth was, I wasn't sure. Ethan watched me carefully. "Mia, love isn't enough. If you don't trust him, if he doesn't trust you, what's left?" Tears burned at the back of my eyes. "I don't know." He reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Then maybe it's time to figure that out." We sat in silence for a while, the sound of rain tapping against the windows. I had always believed that love could fix anything. That if two people cared about each other enough, they would find a way. But maybe I had been wrong. Maybe love wasn't always enough. And maybe, just maybe, I wasn't the only one who needed to make a decision. The next morning, I woke up feeling like my body was made of lead. My head was pounding, my eyes were swollen from crying, and my heart felt like it was barely holding itself together. I lay there for a while, staring at the ceiling, willing myself to move, to do anything other than sink deeper into this pit of uncertainty. But I couldn't. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I reached for it, half hoping, half dreading that it was Noah. But it wasn't. It was Emma. Again. I stared at her name on the screen until the call ended. A few seconds later, a text appeared. Mia, I know you're mad, but please, can we talk? I exhaled sharply, gripping the phone tightly. A part of me wanted to ignore her forever. Another part of me wanted to scream at her until my throat was raw. But mostly, I just wanted to understand why. Before I could overthink it, I typed back, "Fine, come over." 30 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I opened it to find Emma standing there, looking more nervous than I'd ever seen her. She had dark circles under her eyes, and her hands fidgeted at her sides. For the first time, she didn't push past me like she usually did. She just stood there, waiting. I stepped aside. "Come in." She walked in slowly, as if she wasn't sure she was welcome. I closed the door and leaned against the wall, arms crossed. She swallowed hard. "Mia, Why?" The word came out harsher than I intended, but I didn't care. "Why would you do that to me? Why would you go behind my back and talk to Noah about something so personal? Something that should have been between us." Emma's face crumpled. I was trying to help. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Help? Emma, you completely blindsided me. You took something that was already fragile and shattered it." Tears filled her eyes. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I swear. She let out a shaky breath. "I was scared, Mia. I was scared that you were making the wrong choice, that you were ignoring all the signs. I thought if I talked to Noah, maybe he'd be honest with you. Maybe he'd finally tell you the truth." My stomach twisted. "What truth?" She hesitated. My heart started pounding. "Emma, what truth?" She wiped at her face, taking a step closer. "Mia, Noah has been unsure about the wedding for months. He told me. I didn't push him. I didn't even ask. He brought it up. He said he was afraid, that he wasn't sure if he was ready, that he loved you, but he felt like something was missing. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. He didn't want to hurt you," Emma continued, her voice barely above a whisper. "He said he was trying to convince himself that he could do it, that he could be the man you needed him to be. But he was terrified, and he didn't know how to tell you." I sank onto the couch, my legs suddenly too weak to hold me up. My hands trembled as I pressed them against my face, trying to block out the words, the reality of what she was saying. "I know I should have told you," she said, sitting beside me. I didn't want to break your heart. I thought maybe if Noah talked to you, if you heard it from him, it would be easier to accept." I dropped my hands, looking at her through blurry eyes. "Easier?" My voice cracked. How was any of this supposed to be easier? She reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I swear, I was only trying to protect you." I shook my head, letting out a shaky breath. "You don't get to decide what's best for me, Emma. You don't get to make that choice." She nodded, wiping at her tears. "I know." Silence settled between us, heavy and suffocating. For the first time in my life, I didn't know if I could trust my own sister. And even worse, I didn't know if I could trust Noah. The realization hit me like a freight train. All this time, I had been waiting for him to make a choice, to decide if he wanted me. But what about what I wanted? What about the fact that I deserved someone who didn't have to convince himself to love me? I stood up, my mind suddenly clear. Emma looked up at me, her eyes wide. "Mia, I need to talk to Noah." Her expression faltered. "Are you sure?" I nodded. "Yeah, I am." For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was finally taking control. I had spent too long waiting, doubting, questioning. It was time for answers, and I was going to get them. I took a deep breath and dialed Noah's number. My fingers trembled as I held the phone to my ear, waiting for him to pick up. It rang twice before he answered. "Mia." His voice was cautious, uncertain. "We need to talk," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. There was a pause. "I know. I was going to call you. Can you come over?" Another pause. "Yeah, I'll be there in 20 minutes." I hung up without another word. My heart was racing, but my mind was clear. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid of what I would hear. I needed the truth, no matter how painful it was. 20 minutes felt like an eternity. I paced the living room, my thoughts spiraling in every direction. Part of me still hoped that Emma was wrong. that Noah would walk through that door and tell me he loved me, that he wanted to marry me. But deep down, I knew better. When the doorbell rang, I froze for a moment before forcing myself to move. I opened the door and found Noah standing there, looking exhausted. His eyes were red, his jaw tense. He stepped inside, rubbing the back of his neck. "Thanks for letting me come over," he said. I crossed my arms. "I didn't do it for you." He let out a long breath. "I deserve that." I gestured toward the couch, and he sat down. I remained standing, keeping my distance. "Noah," I said, my voice firmer than I expected, "I need you to be honest with me. No more hiding, no more half-truths. Do you want to marry me?" His head dropped, and for a long moment, he didn't answer. That silence was the answer. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You don't, do you?" He looked up at me, pain written all over his face. "Mia, I love you." "I do." "But," I held up a hand, cutting him off. "No, but. Just tell me the truth." His shoulders sagged. "I'm not sure I can be the husband you deserve." A sharp pain shot through my chest, but I refused to let it break me. "Why didn't you tell me this sooner?" "I wanted to," he said. "I tried, but every time I looked at you, I saw how happy you were, how sure you were about us, and I felt like the worst person in the world for having doubts." I clenched my jaw. "So instead of being honest, you let me plan a wedding? You let me believe we had a future?" His eyes were filled with guilt. "I thought maybe if I gave it time, the doubts would go away. I thought I could make myself feel ready." Tears burned behind my eyes, but I refused to cry. "You can't force love, Noah. You can't fake certainty." "I know." His voice cracked. "And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Mia." I shook my head, letting out a bitter laugh. "You weren't just unsure, were you? You were never going to marry me." His silence confirmed it. The weight of it all hit me at once. The years we spent together, the memories, the dreams we had for the future, they weren't real. At least, not in the way I thought they were. I had spent so much time fighting for us, convincing myself that love was enough. But love wasn't enough if it wasn't mutual. I took a deep breath, forcing myself to stay strong. I deserve someone who doesn't have to convince himself to be with me. Noah nodded, his eyes glistening. "You do." A heavy silence fell between us. For the first time in years, I looked at him and didn't see my future. I saw a man who had been holding me back, who had been too afraid to let go even when he knew he should. I turned toward the door and opened it. "I think you should go." Noah hesitated, as if he wanted to say more, but in the end, he just nodded. He stood up slowly, walking past me. He stopped in the doorway, looking back one last time. "I hope one day you can forgive me," he said softly. I met his gaze, my voice unwavering. "I hope one day I can too." And then he was gone. I closed the door, pressing my forehead against it. My body felt numb, my heart shattered. But for the first time in a long time, I felt free. It was over. And now, I had to figure out how to start again. The first few days after Noah left felt like a blur. I went through the motions of my routine, but nothing felt real. It was like I was living in someone else's body, watching my own life from the outside. The silence in my apartment was deafening, the absence of his presence suffocating. Even though we had spent less time together lately, knowing that he wasn't coming back made the emptiness unbearable. I found myself picking up my phone multiple times, wanting to text him, not to fix things. There was nothing left to fix, but out of habit. For years, he had been the person I shared everything with. If I had a bad day at work, I texted Noah. If I saw something funny on the street, I sent him a picture. And now, I had to remind myself that he wasn't my person anymore. Emma came over that evening with takeout and a bottle of wine. She didn't ask how I was feeling, didn't push me to talk. Instead, she just sat beside me on the couch, handed me a fork, and turned on some ridiculous reality show where people got married after knowing each other for a week. After a while, she paused the show and looked at me. "So what now?" I stared at my half-eaten food, not really tasting it. "I don't know." "You could burn all his stuff," she suggested. I let out a small laugh. "I already gave it back." Emma nodded approvingly. "Good. That's the first step." I sighed, rubbing my temples. I wasted so much time, Emma. I spent years believing in something that was never real. She placed a hand on my shoulder. It was real to you. That matters. I shook my head. Does it? Because right now, it just feels like I was an idiot. Emma squeezed my arm. You weren't an idiot. You loved someone and gave them your whole heart. That's brave, not stupid. I exhaled slowly, trying to let her words sink in. It still hurts. It will, she admitted. For a while, but it'll hurt less every day. I nodded, though I wasn't sure I believed her. A few days later, I decided to go back to work. Sitting alone in my apartment, drowning in my own thoughts, wasn't helping. I needed to distract myself, to feel like my life hadn't completely fallen apart. As soon as I walked into the office, I regretted it. People whispered as I passed by, their eyes filled with fake sympathy. A few co-workers came up to me, offering condolences as if someone had died. In a way, I guess someone had. The version of me who thought she had a future with Noah. I forced a polite smile and powered through the day. But the worst part came when my boss, Mr. Reynolds, called me into his office. He leaned forward, his expression one of forced concern. Mia, I just wanted to check in. I know you and Noah were close. I clenched my jaw. Of course, he knew. Noah and I had worked in the same office for years before he left for another company, and people still talked about us like we were some office fairy tale. I'm fine, I said, keeping my voice steady. He nodded slowly. If you need time off. I don't. He hesitated, then sighed. All right, but if you do, just let me know. I left his office as quickly as I could, my face burning. The last thing I needed was pity. When lunchtime rolled around, I considered hiding in the break room, but Emma had other plans. She dragged me out for coffee, and as we waited in line, I caught a glimpse of something, or rather, someone, that made my stomach drop. Noah. And he wasn't alone. A woman stood beside him, laughing at something he said. She was tall, blonde, effortlessly beautiful. The kind of woman who looked like she had her life together. Emma saw them too. She tensed beside me, ready to go into attack mode, but I grabbed her wrist before she could say anything. Don't, I whispered. She exhaled sharply. Are you okay? No, I wasn't, but I wouldn't let Noah see that. I turned away before he could notice me, but my hands were shaking. Seeing him so soon, looking so fine, while I was barely holding myself together, felt like a punch to the gut. Emma linked her arm through mine and led me outside. He's a coward, she muttered. And that woman, she probably doesn't even know who he really is. I nodded numbly, but my mind was spinning. Had he moved on already? Had he been seeing her before we broke up? I told myself I didn't care, but the truth was, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Noah and that woman, her smile, the way she leaned into him, the way he looked so comfortable, like he hadn't just shattered everything we had built. I knew it was pointless to obsess over it, but knowing that and stopping my brain from replaying the scene were two completely different things. At some point in the middle of the night, I found myself scrolling through old messages, looking for some kind of sign, something that would tell me when it all started, how long I had been blind to what was right in front of me. But of course, there was nothing. He had played his role perfectly until the very end. By morning, I was exhausted but too restless to stay home. I threw on the first outfit I could find, barely bothering with makeup, and left for work. If I sat alone in my apartment for one more minute, I was going to lose my mind. Emma was waiting for me at my desk when I arrived, a cup of coffee in hand. She didn't say anything at first, just handed it to me with a knowing look. I took a sip, grateful for the caffeine, even more grateful for her presence. He's an asshole, she finally said. I let out a breath, nodding. Yeah, and you're gonna be fine. I wanted to believe that. The day passed in a blur of emails, meetings, and forced small talk. I kept my head down, focusing on anything but the swirling thoughts in my head. It worked for a while, until lunch. I was walking back to my desk when I overheard two co-workers talking near the break room. I wasn't trying to listen, but my name caught my attention, stopping me in my tracks. "Did you hear about Mia and Noah?" One of them whispered. "Yeah, it's crazy. But honestly, I saw it coming." I felt my stomach twist, but I stayed frozen, my back pressed against the wall just out of sight. The way he was always staying late at work before he left. And remember that one office party where he was talking to that blonde girl all night? I think her name was Claire or something. I stopped breathing. Claire. It was such a simple name, but it hit me like a truck, because that was the same woman I had seen him with yesterday. I didn't need to hear anything else. I turned on my heel and walked away before they could notice me, my hands clenched into fists. Noah hadn't just moved on fast. He had moved on with someone who had been in the picture long before our relationship ended. And suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the emotional distance, the way he had been pulling away from me for months. I felt sick. I barely made it through the rest of the day. The second the clock hit 5, I grabbed my bag and practically ran out of the building. Emma followed close behind, not asking questions, just knowing I needed to get out of there. When we got to my apartment, she sat on the couch and crossed her arms. "All right, tell me what's going on." I dropped my bag onto the floor and sank into the chair across from her. "Claire." Emma frowned. "Who?" "The woman I saw Noah with yesterday. Her name is Claire, and apparently they've known each other for a while." Her expression darkened. "You think he cheated?" I let out a bit of laugh. I don't know if it was physical, but emotionally, yeah, he checked out of our relationship long before he had the decency to end it. Emma muttered a curse under her breath. "I swear if I ever see him." I shook my head. It doesn't matter anymore. But it did. It mattered more than I wanted to admit. I wished I could flip a switch and stop caring. I wished I could erase him from my memory, erase the years we spent together, erase the version of myself that believed he was the love of my life. Instead, I did the only thing I could think of. I blocked his number. It was a small thing, almost meaningless in the grand scheme of things. But when his name disappeared from my phone, I felt just a little bit lighter. And for now, that was enough. The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating on the nightstand. For a moment, in that disoriented haze between sleep and wakefulness, I thought it might be Noah. Then I remembered. I had blocked his number. The realization brought a strange mix of emotions. Relief, sadness, anger, but mostly a sense of finality. I reached for my phone and saw Emma's name flashing on screen. "Are you awake?" she asked the second I picked up. "Barely," I muttered, rubbing my eyes. "Well, wake up faster. You're not going to believe this." I sat up, suddenly more alert. "What happened?" Emma hesitated, like she was deciding whether to soften the blow or just rip the Band-Aid off. "Noah and Claire. They're official. Like social media official." A strange, hollow feeling spread through my chest. "You're joking." I wish I was. Someone from work sent me a screenshot. He posted a picture with her last night. Some stupid caption about new beginnings or whatever. I exhaled slowly, trying to process it. It had barely been a week. A week since he stood in my apartment, telling me he wasn't sure about us, that he needed space. A week since I had cried myself to sleep, thinking he just needed time to figure things out. And the whole time, he had been with her. I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room, punch a wall, do anything to get rid of the burning frustration building inside me. But instead, I just lay there, gripping the sheets like they were the only thing keeping me grounded. Emma was still on the line, waiting for my reaction. "He really didn't waste any time, did he?" I said, my voice hollow. "He's a piece of shit," Emma said. "And honestly, this just proves he was already with her before he ended things with you. There's no way he moved on that fast unless she was already in the picture." I already knew that. I had known at the moment I heard her name at work, but hearing it out loud made it feel even more real. Emma sighed. "I know this sucks, but I also know you, and I know you're about to spiral. So here's what we're gonna do. We're going out tonight." I groaned, flopping back onto the pillows. "Emma, no arguments. You're getting dressed, we're getting drinks, and you're going to remember that there's a whole world outside of that lying, cheating asshole." I stared at the ceiling, considering my options. I could stay in bed, refreshing social media like a masochist, Or I could let Emma drag me out and at least pretend I was okay. Fine, I muttered. But if the place has couples everywhere, I'm leaving. Emma laughed. Deal. I'll pick you up at 8. By the time I was getting ready, I felt slightly better. Not good, but at least functional. I put on a black dress that I hadn't worn in ages, one that made me feel like I had my life together, even if it was far from the truth. My makeup was heavier than usual, red lips, dark eyeliner, a distraction, a mask. Emma showed up at my door right on time, grinning when she saw me. Damn, Noah's gonna regret everything if he sees you tonight. I rolled my eyes, but couldn't help smiling a little. That's not the goal. Maybe not, but it's a nice bonus. The bar she took me to was packed, the kind of place with dim lighting, loud music, and overpriced cocktails. Perfect for drowning out my thoughts. We found a spot at the bar, and Emma immediately ordered us drinks. To new beginnings, she said, raising her glass. I hesitated for a second, then clinked mine against hers. To new beginnings. The first drink went down fast. So did the second. By the third, I was starting to feel the tension in my body ease, the weight in my chest a little lighter. Maybe this was exactly what I needed. Then I turned my head and saw him, Noah, with Claire. They were sitting at a table across the room, leaning in close, laughing at something I couldn't hear. Claire had her hand on his arm, her body angled toward him in a way that made it obvious. She was comfortable with him. This wasn't new. The nausea hit instantly. Emma noticed my change in expression before I could say anything. She followed my gaze, and the moment she spotted them, her entire body tensed. You have got to be kidding me. I wanted to look away, to pretend like it didn't bother me, but I couldn't. It was like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the wreckage was my life, and Noah was walking away from it without a scratch. Emma grabbed my hand. We can leave. I swallowed hard. No, if I leave, it looks like I care. She gave me a pointed look. You do care. I know, but he doesn't need to see that. Emma exhaled sharply. Okay, then we do the opposite. We have fun. We laugh. We show him that you're doing just fine. I forced a smile, even though my heart was pounding. Fine, let's do that. Emma ordered another round, and I did my best to focus on anything other than the way Noah was looking at Claire, the way he used to look at me. But no amount of alcohol could numb the ache in my chest. I gripped my drink so tightly that I was surprised the glass didn't shatter in my hand. My stomach was twisting itself into knots, but I forced myself to keep my expression neutral. Noah didn't deserve to know how much this was affecting me. Emma was still watching them, her lips pressed into a thin line. Do you want me to go over there and accidentally spill my drink on her? I almost laughed at the thought of it, but I shook my head. No, that's exactly the kind of reaction he'd expect from me. I don't want to give him the satisfaction. Emma exhaled sharply. Fine, then let's just make sure you're the one having a better night than he is. Easier said than done, because no matter how much I wanted to move on, no matter how much I wanted to pretend that seeing him with Claire didn't hurt, it did. It hurt in a way I wasn't prepared for. I downed the rest of my drink and set the glass on the bar with more force than necessary. I need another one. Emma hesitated. Are you sure? Yes. She signaled the bartender, and soon another cocktail was placed in front of me. I took a sip, barely even tasting it. All I could focus on was the way Claire leaned in closer to Noah, whispering something in his ear. He laughed. One of those easy, genuine laughs I hadn't heard in so long. It was like a punch to the gut. How was it so easy for him? How was he sitting there, acting like none of it mattered? Like I had been just a temporary part of his life that he had already forgotten. Emma must have noticed the way my entire body stiffened because she nudged me. Okay, I have a terrible idea, but it might help. I turned to her, desperate for anything to take my mind off Noah and Claire. I'm listening. She smirked. Flirt with someone. I blinked. What? Just a little. You don't have to actually be interested. But let's be honest, the best way to piss off an ex is to show them you're doing just fine without them. I hesitated. It wasn't like me to play games. But then again, Noah had been playing me for who knows how long. Maybe it was time to change the rules. I glanced around the bar, scanning the crowd. Most of the guys here were either with someone or way too drunk to even hold a conversation. But then, at the far end of the bar, I saw him. Tall, dark hair, sharp jawline. He had that effortlessly put-together look, the kind that made it seem like he didn't have to try too hard to get attention. And judging by the way a couple of girls nearby kept sneaking glances at him, I wasn't the only one who had noticed. Emma followed my gaze and grinned. "Oh, he's perfect." I took a deep breath. "All right, let's do this." I grabbed my drink and made my way toward him, my heart pounding in a way that had nothing to do with attraction and everything to do with the fact that I had no idea what I was doing. When I reached him, he glanced up, his eyes locking onto mine. Up close, he was even more attractive than I had realized. "Hey," I said, trying to sound casual. He tilted his head slightly, studying me for a second before his lips curved into a smirk. "Hey, okay, good start." I leaned against the bar, swirling the ice in my glass. "So, is this the part where I come up with a clever line? Or do we just skip to the part where you tell me your name?" He chuckled. "I think I like the second option. I'm Ethan." I smiled. "Nice to meet you, Ethan." We fell into easy conversation. He was charming, quick-witted, and just the right amount of cocky. And for a few minutes, I almost forgot about Noah. Almost. But then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement. Noah was standing up, walking toward us. My pulse spiked, but I forced myself to stay calm. Ethan noticed the shift in my expression. Something wrong. Before I could answer, Noah was there, standing just a few feet away, his expression unreadable. I turned to him, my voice perfectly steady. "Something you need?" Noah's jaw tightened. "Can we talk?" Ethan glanced between us, clearly sensing the tension. "You two know each other." I gave him a tight smile. "Unfortunately." Noah ignored him, his focus entirely on me. "Just 5 minutes." I should have said no. I should have turned my back on him and walked away. But there was something in his voice, something that made me hesitate. I exhaled slowly. "Fine. 5 minutes." Ethan gave me a questioning look, but I nodded, letting him know I was okay. Then I followed Noah toward the back of the bar, away from the crowd. The second we were alone, he ran a hand through his hair, looking frustrated. "Really? Flirting with some random guy just to get back at me?" I crossed my arms. "What, you're allowed to move on, but I'm not." He scoffed. "That's not the same." I let out a bitter laugh. "You're right. It's not. Because I wasn't sneaking around behind your back while we were still together." Noah's expression darkened. "I never cheated on you." "Don't insult my intelligence," I snapped. "You might not have slept with her while we were together, but you were already halfway out the door before you had the guts to actually leave. That's just as bad." He didn't deny it. Silence stretched between us. Finally, he exhaled, his shoulders dropping slightly. "I didn't want to hurt you." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You did." His gaze softened. For a second, it almost felt like the Noah I used to know, the one who would have done anything to keep from hurting me. But that Noah didn't exist anymore. I took a step back. "I'm done with this conversation." Noah looked like he wanted to say something else, but he didn't. I turned on my heel and walked away, my heart pounding. As I reached Emma and Ethan, I forced a smile. "Everything okay?" Emma asked, her eyes full of concern. I picked up my drink, taking a slow sip. "Yeah," I said. "I think I just got the closure I needed." I sat at the bar, my fingers tapping idly against the side of my glass. The ice had already begun to melt, watering down whatever was left of my drink, but I hadn't taken a sip in a while. My mind was too busy replaying that conversation with Noah, over and over again, like a song I couldn't get out of my head. I had told him I was done. I had told myself I was done. But why didn't it feel like it? Emma nudged my arm. "You okay?" I forced a small smile. "Yeah." She didn't look convinced, but she didn't push. Instead, she glanced toward Ethan, who was still sitting at the bar, sipping his drink like he hadn't just witnessed a soap opera-level drama unfold in front of him. I turned to him, feeling a little embarrassed. "Sorry about that." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "Don't be. That was the most interesting thing I've seen all night. I let out a breathy laugh. Glad my misery could entertain you. Misery? He tilted his head, studying me. You don't strike me as the miserable X-type. I shrugged. Guess I'm full of surprises. Ethan smirked. Well, if you're looking for a way to actually enjoy the rest of your night, I was about to get out of here. You want to come? Emma's eyes widened slightly as she looked at me. I knew exactly what she was thinking. This was a bad idea. I didn't know Ethan. I had met him less than an hour ago. But maybe that was the point. Maybe I needed a distraction, something, or someone, to pull me out of this emotional black hole Noah had left me in. I glanced at Emma. She gave me a subtle nod, as if to say, your choice. I turned back to Ethan. All right. Where to? His smirk widened. You'll see. We left the bar, the cold night air hitting me the second we stepped outside. It was refreshing, clearing some of the fog from my mind. Ethan led me to a sleek black car parked a few feet away. Nice ride, I said, raising an eyebrow. He chuckled. You sound surprised. I slid into the passenger seat. Let's just say you don't seem like the fancy car type. Ethan got in and started the engine. And what type do I seem like? I glanced at him, considering. I haven't decided yet. He grinned. Good. I like to keep people guessing. The car pulled away from the curb, and I realized I had no idea where we were going. But for some reason, I wasn't worried. Maybe it was the alcohol still in my system, or maybe it was just the thrill of doing something reckless for once. We drove for a while, the city lights blurring past us. I leaned back in my seat, watching the skyline. Finally, Ethan pulled into an empty parking lot near the edge of the city. I frowned. This is unexpected. He smirked, unbuckling his seatbelt. Come on. I followed him out of the car, the wind whipping through my hair. He led me toward a small path that wound up a hill. I hesitated. Are you about to murder me? Ethan laughed. If I was, would I have bought you a drink first? I considered. Fair point. We walked up the hill, and when we reached the top, I saw why he had brought me here. The entire city stretched out before us, a sea of twinkling lights. It was breathtaking. Wow, I breathed. Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets. Not bad, right? I shook my head. Not bad at all. We stood there for a while, neither of us saying anything. It was peaceful, the quiet hum of the city below, the only sound in the air. Then Ethan broke the silence. So, that guy back at the bar, what's the story? I exhaled slowly. It's complicated. I've got time. I glanced at him. He wasn't pushing, just offering a space for me to talk if I wanted to. And maybe I did. I leaned against a nearby railing. We were together for a long time. Then one day, I found out he had been seeing someone else. Ethan didn't look surprised. The blonde at the bar? I nodded. Her. He let out a low whistle. Ouch. Yeah. So, what was that whole scene about? Looked like he wasn't as over you as he pretended to be. I shrugged. I don't know. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe he just didn't like seeing me with someone else. Ethan smirked. Well, I'm happy to play the role of mysterious rebound guy if it helps. I laughed, shaking my head. Appreciate the offer. He turned to face me fully. But seriously, you don't seem like someone who lets people walk all over them. So why are you still letting this guy get to you? I swallowed hard, because for a long time, I thought he was it for me. Ethan didn't say anything for a moment. Then he sighed. You know what I think? I raised an eyebrow. What? He leaned against the railing next to me. I think you're giving him way too much power. He made his choice. Now it's time for you to make yours. His words hit me harder than I expected. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had spent too much time letting Noah dictate how I felt. Maybe it was time to take that control back. I turned to Ethan. You know, for a guy I just met, you're surprisingly insightful. He grinned. Don't let it go to your head. We stayed up there a little longer, watching the city. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe. The moment stretched out, heavy and unbearable, as I stood in the dimly lit cafe, staring at Mia. Her face was unreadable, a mix of exhaustion and something deeper, regret maybe. I didn't know anymore. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. Everything that had led to this moment played in my head like a film on fast forward. The suspicious glances, the half-truths, the painful discoveries, and the cruel, twisting realization that I had been played for a fool. Mia finally broke the silence. Her voice was barely above a whisper, but it cut through me like a blade. I never wanted you to find out this way. I let out a bitter laugh, shaking my head. Oh, so there was a right way for me to find out that the person I loved was lying to me. She flinched. I didn't mean for it to happen like this. I swear. I wanted to yell, to throw something, to make her feel just a fraction of the chaos she had put me through. But instead, I just stood there, hands clenched into fists at my sides, trying to breathe through the anger. So tell me, Mia, I said, voice trembling. Who was the gift really for? She looked down, staring at the coffee cup in her hands like it held the answer. And then, after what felt like an eternity, she spoke. It was for Rachel. The name hit me like a sledgehammer. Rachel, her best friend, the woman who had always been there in the background, smiling, laughing, acting like she was just a supportive friend. I had never once thought. Mia lifted her gaze to mine, eyes shining with unshed tears. I know what you're thinking, and it's not what you think. Oh, really? My voice was sharp, venomous. Then what is it, Mia? Because from where I'm standing, it looks exactly like what I think it is. She took a shaky breath. I didn't cheat on you. I never did. But she swallowed hard. I fell in love with her. The words felt like a slap. I had expected a confession, expected her to admit that she had been seeing someone behind my back. But this was worse in a way I couldn't even explain. You fell in love with her, I repeated, the words foreign in my mouth. Mia nodded, blinking rapidly. I didn't mean to. I fought it for so long. I told myself it was just admiration, that it was just the closeness of friendship. But then, I realized that I was lying to myself. And I was lying to you. A cold laugh escaped me. And yet you stayed. You let me believe we had something real. Tears finally spilled down her cheeks. I was scared. I didn't want to hurt you. I ran a hand through my hair, stepping back like I needed physical distance to process everything. You didn't want to hurt me? Mia, do you have any idea what you've done? She sobbed softly, pressing a hand to her mouth. I exhaled sharply, trying to stop my hands from shaking. So all those nights you came home late, all those times you acted strange, that was because of her. She nodded miserably. I was trying to figure it out, trying to understand myself. And I kept thinking, maybe if I ignored it, it would go away. Maybe I could just be the person you needed me to be. I stared at her, feeling like the air had been knocked out of me. But you weren't. She shook her head. I wasn't. Silence fell between us again. The noise of the cafe faded into nothing. So, I said finally, voice hollow, what now? Mia wiped her tears away, standing up straighter. I think we both know what has to happen. I laughed humorlessly. Yeah, and what's that? Her bottom lip trembled, but her gaze was steady. We have to let go. The words settled between us, heavy and undeniable. I looked at her, really looked at her, and realized that the woman standing in front of me wasn't the same person I had fallen in love with. Or maybe she was, and I had just never seen the truth. I swallowed hard. So that's it. Mia stepped closer, reaching out like she wanted to touch me, but stopping just short. I love you. I always will, but not in the way you deserve. A lump formed in my throat. I don't know if I can forgive you. She nodded. I understand. We stood there, two people who had shared so much, now standing on opposite sides of an unbridgeable gap. Finally, I took a step back, then another, and then I turned around and walked away. Each step felt like dragging a knife through my chest, but I didn't stop. I couldn't, because if I turned back now, I might never leave. And some things weren't meant to be fixed.
Thank you very much for watching. Did you like this story? Like, subscribe, and write a comment about your opinion.